When you think of daring escapes, you might think of people running away in the darkness of night, hiding in the wilderness, or maybe stowing away aboard a ship. One famous couple escaped slavery, doing none of those things. They traveled on first-class trains, boarded steamships in plain sight. They even dined with the ship's captain, all while wearing the perfect disguise. What was this disguise, you ask? Well, I'll tell you in just a minute. This is the incredible escape of Ellen and William Craft.
Hi, young historians. Welcome to Any Time Now. I'm Brooke, the co-founder of Honest History. I am so excited to be introducing the first ever episode of our podcast. This week, we're going to explore the incredible story of a daring escape that happened in a time not that long ago. Like so many people, the couple in the story have been mostly forgotten in the pages of history. But that doesn't mean their story is any less important. As you listen, think about other people who went through a similar experience, but never had their story told. Maybe think of how you would have reacted if you were in their shoes. And ask yourself, what's my next adventure that will inspire others and make a positive impact on history? Now, let's get into it.
The story begins in 1848. Ellen and William Craft were married and worked in Macon, Georgia. Ellen was a lady's maid in the house, and William was a cabinet maker. Ellen and William were both enslaved and dreamed of freedom. At this time, Georgia had more slaves than any other state in the lower South. Most of those enslaved worked on cotton and rice plantations. The work was brutal. Ellen and William were some of the lucky few who did not have to work in the fields. But as enslaved people, Ellen and William did not have any legal rights or civil rights. They were owned by their enslaver, and they could be sold and separated from their family at any moment. This is something both Ellen and William knew and experienced. William had watched his entire family be sold off to different southern plantations. Ellen and William had known each other for a few years before they got married. For a while, they talked about marriage, but waited. They knew that if they ever had children, their children would also be enslaved. At any moment, they could be taken away and sold to other plantations. Ellen and William didn't want this to happen. For years, they tried to think of a plan. How could they make sure their future children would be free? Then, in December 1848, they came up with a dangerous plan. They were going to escape. They would travel 1,000 miles north. In the north, they would be free. They just had to figure out how they were going to do this without getting caught. William had an idea. Ellen had lighter skin. Her mother was black, and her father was her white enslaver. She had been mistaken for a white person many times. This gave William his brilliant idea. Ellen would disguise herself as a white man, and William would pose as her servant. At first, Ellen wasn't sure about the plan. She was afraid no one would believe the disguise. But as days passed, Ellen decided it was worth the risk. "If you will purchase the disguise," Ellen said to her husband, "I will try to carry out the plan." William cut Ellen's hair and bought most of the clothing she needed: a shirt, top hat, and green spectacles. Ellen made her own trousers. To hide her face, she tied a bandage from her chin to the top of her head. People would see Ellen and think she had a bad toothache. But there was still one big problem. What if someone asked her to sign her name? In Georgia, it was illegal to teach enslaved people how to read or write. Ellen and William didn't know how to write their names. They were stuck. They needed a good idea. "I think I have it," Ellen yelled. She put her arm in a sling so that it looked like her hand was injured. If anyone asked her to sign her name, she would just point to the sling. So there was Ellen, short hair, top hat, trousers, green spectacles, bandaged face, and an arm in a sling. Ellen looked like a man, they thought. Well, a sickly man. But this was all part of the plan. They would tell people that they were traveling north for Ellen's health. If you had seen Ellen in her bandages, you would agree. She looked like she needed to see a doctor. Now that they had their disguise and story in place, they had to figure out when they would escape. Ellen and William got permission to get a few days off before Christmas. This gave them some time before anyone noticed they were missing. On December 21st, Ellen and William began their daring journey from Georgia to Philadelphia. They left their home, walked to the train station, and got on their first train. They soon learned that this was not going to be easy. A man sat down next to Ellen on the train.
"It's a very fine morning, sir,"
he said. Ellen immediately recognized the man. It was Mr. Cray. He had dined at the house on the plantation just the day before. What if he figured out who she was? Ellen panicked. She acted like she couldn't hear him.
"It's a fine morning, sir,"
he began again, louder. Ellen was silent.
"It's a fine morning, sir,"
he yelled. Ellen still pretended she couldn't hear him. People on the train started to laugh. Can you believe it? This had actually worked. It wasn't long before Mr. Cray got up and left. Ellen and William made it to their first destination, Savannah, Georgia. From there, they got onto a steamship. This ship would take them to Charleston, South Carolina. When they got onto the ship, Ellen pretended she was sick so she could go to bed early. She was afraid to talk to anyone. What if people figured out she wasn't a man? But she didn't really need to worry. Her disguise was pretty convincing. The next morning, she even ate breakfast next to the captain of the ship. The captain was so sure that Ellen was a white man and William was her servant that he warned her about traveling north.
"You better watch him like a hawk,"
the captain said. He warned Ellen that William would try to run away. Once they arrived in Charleston, they stayed at a hotel for the night. The next day, they went to buy their tickets to get on another steamship to North Carolina. This was the day they almost got caught. When they arrived at the ticket office, the ticket officer asked Ellen to sign her name to get the tickets. Ellen pointed to her arm in a sling. The ticket officer shook his head. He still wanted her to sign. Ellen and William were terrified. She couldn't write her name. What were they going to do? All the commotion caught the ship's captain's attention. He was the captain of the ship Ellen and William were trying to get onto. The captain decided he didn't want to lose any passengers.
I will sign this gentleman's name.
the captain said. He pointed to Ellen.
What is your name?
William Johnson, Ellen lied. The captain signed, and the officer handed over the tickets. It was a miracle. The Crafts got on the ship and arrived in North Carolina. From there, they got on a few more trains and steamboats until, finally, they arrived in Maryland. Now, Maryland was near the Mason-Dixon line. This was the line that divided the slave-owning states in the South from the free states in the North. Just one more train across the line, and they would be free. They got to the train station, ready to get on their last train to Philadelphia. William dropped Ellen off in the first-class carriage of the train. This was where the wealthy white men sat. Then William left Ellen and jumped onto the platform so he could walk over to his carriage. An officer spotted William on the platform before he could get back onto the train.
Where are you going?
The officer asked. To Philadelphia, sir, William replied. The officer wanted to know who he was traveling with and why he was going to Philadelphia. Then he told William that he needed to get Ellen off of the train and meet him in his office. William's heart beat in his chest. He wasn't sure what would happen. He hoped luck would be on their side once again. He got onto Ellen's carriage and told her the news. Ellen thought they had almost made it, but now it seemed like they might get caught after all. She stepped off the train and onto the platform. She walked over to the office to see the officer. You wanted to see me, sir? She asked.
You need to prove that this man is your slave,
the officer told Ellen. He wanted Ellen to give him papers to show she owned William. Ellen and William didn't know what to do. They didn't have any papers to show the officer. The train was going to leave at any moment. The conductor from another train stepped into the office.
These two travel on your train from Washington?
The officer asked the conductor.
Yes, they did,
the conductor said. Would this help? The officer still wasn't sure if he could trust Ellen. The bell rang for the train to leave. He looked at Ellen in her bandages and sling. He started to feel bad.
As he is not well,
the officer said. He was talking about Ellen.
It is a pity to stop him here. We will let him go.
Finally, the Crafts got onto the train to Philadelphia. When the Crafts got to Philadelphia, they ran to a house they knew was safe. It was a boarding house run by an abolitionist. Abolitionists were people who wanted to end slavery and helped people like Ellen and William. When they got there, Ellen was so happy she could finally take off her disguise. The abolitionists told William and Ellen that they would be safer going even further north, all the way to Boston. In Philadelphia, they could still be kidnapped and sent back to the South. Ellen and William were tired. It had been a stressful journey. They wanted to take a few weeks to rest. But there was something else they wanted to do. They wanted to learn how to write. By the time they left for Boston, Ellen and William could both write their own names. William and Ellen were excited to start their new life. In Boston, William had his own shop as a cabinet maker. Ellen worked as a seamstress. They shared their tale, and soon people all over Boston knew about the Crafts and their incredible escape. But this is not the end of the story. For nearly 2 years, the Crafts lived in Boston. Then, in 1850, a law passed that said all enslaved people had to be returned to their enslavers. This law was called the Fugitive Slave Law, or the Fugitive Slave Act. Ellen and William were in trouble. Slave catchers were on the hunt. searching for people who had escaped slavery. 2 men from Macon, Georgia arrived in Boston. There was a warrant out for Ellen and William's arrest. The Crafts knew they had to hide, and their friends were ready to help. William and Ellen split up so they weren't in the same place. Ellen hid in the homes of friends and white abolitionists just outside the city. Meanwhile, William barricaded himself in his shop. He was armed and ready if anyone should try to kidnap him. But William wasn't alone. A Boston newspaper reported that nearly 200 black citizens guarded William's shop. They weren't going to let anyone take the Crafts. For the next few days, the Crafts hid in places all over Boston until the 2 men left. The Crafts knew it was only a matter of time before those men or someone else returned. William and Ellen had to get out of the U.S. Where should they go? They decided to travel across the ocean all the way to England. After they landed in England, the Crafts could breathe one big sigh of relief. They were safe. William and Ellen lived in England for nearly 20 years. There, they spoke out against slavery. They also started a family, just as they wished their 5 children were born free. It was a long time before the Crafts felt it was safe enough to go back to the U.S. In the 1870s, they finally returned to the place where it all began, Georgia. There, they started a school for black men and women. Few people have such an incredible story to tell as Ellen and William Craft. They knew it too. William and Ellen wrote a book so everyone could read about their dangerous journey. They called it Running 1,000 Miles for Freedom, or The Escape of William and Ellen Craft from Slavery. Disguised as a white man and a servant, Ellen and William Craft fooled everyone to get their freedom. A story no one would ever forget.
Hi everyone, Brooke again. The Crafts are such an amazing example of bravery and courage. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you learned something from this week's episode. I know I did. We'll be back soon with more exciting stories from around the world, and in the meantime, you can discover a world of adventure in Honest History's books and magazine, like the story of Olympic athletes, African rulers, spies, deep sea explorers, and so much more. See you next time! This episode was hosted by Clare Brown and written by Heidi Coburn. Production was led by Randall Lawrence. To learn more about this episode, including more about the hosts, visit us at honesthistorymag.com and follow along for updates on social media at Honest History.